And I'm Lisa.
And this is the Paid Media Playbook, where we talk to marketing professionals about their challenges, tactics, and triumphs.
Join us here at Double Z Media for weekly conversations about media strategies for marketing leaders.
Hello, and welcome David Bauer from Hemispheres. David, we're so happy to have you here today.
Laura, thank you so much for having me join. I'm looking forward to it. I haven't done much podcasting yet, and I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, you've got that Yeti microphone, so you are ready. So, David, first of all, Hemispheres, tell us a little bit about it and then how you started. Because what I know about Hemispheres is you guys are all things research across the board, but I deal with it with marketing and media.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Hemispheres has been around for 22 years now, which is crazy. Can't believe it's been going by so fast. We're a full service customer insights agency doing all kinds of research and strategy projects. We use a lot of different research tools, working with clients across different types of organizations and delivering them the insights that they need to make important business decisions.
Well, that's what made you get into that.
So I have a degree in marketing and creative writing. I originally thought I was going to become a copywriter working in advertising and marketing. And I found a brand strategy agency called Tattoo that did brand consulting and brand strategy in San Francisco and worked with them when I was relatively young, and found out that they did research to inform the brand strategy. At that point, when I was 24, I had no idea what marketing research was or that people even did that. And so we helped to inform some huge brands. And during that time, as a relatively young person, I was sitting in meetings with CMOs of Fortune 500 companies and learning so much. And I loved talking to people and getting their life story and their insights. And then that really helped shape some of the brand strategy that we worked on. And the cool thing about research was that even at a relatively young age, I was able to share things that people told me with these leaders of Fortune 500 companies. They wouldn't have listened to me when I was 24, but I was sharing things that their customers had said, which was really cool.
I love that.
And I just really enjoyed the opportunity. It's been an amazing career. My business partner, Lynn Reed, has a similar background. She got into business strategy and go-to-market strategy and used research to inform that. So we've really created Hemispheres with the idea that, yes, we're doing research, but it's really there to inform brand strategy and business strategy. And that's what gets us excited.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So can you talk about any of the cool brands you used to work with, or it's okay if you can't?
No, absolutely. I mean, over the years, we've done work with Microsoft, John Deere, a lot of different food companies like Frito, Clarisonic, which was founded by David Giuliani, who created the Sonicare toothbrush, and then the Clarisonic facial brush. They started their company around the same time we did in 2003, and we worked with them for 10 years as they grew and grew and grew, and then eventually sold to L'Oreal. And unfortunately, David passed away a few years ago, but an amazing mentor and an amazing inventor. And he really created his companies by listening to his team, listening to his customers. And I think that was a big part of their success. So that's one of the exciting projects we worked on. One of my favorite things that I've done is get to travel internationally on projects. And so we work with local translators. I've been to farm country in Brazil and Bogota, Colombia, and across Europe, and to Hong Kong and Sydney, and such an opportunity to meet different people. One of our favorite stories, we were working on a project for Microsoft in Milan, Italy, and we were talking to people who made technology decisions, software decisions for their organizations. And so we're there interviewing people, and in comes a nun dressed in her full nun habit.
Yes.
She's over 50 or so. And we're all like, oh, she must be in the wrong place. But we have to be obviously really gentle and sweet with her. And it turns out that she makes all the business decisions and software decisions for her convent and knew everything about technology.
I love it.
So it's just a reminder never to make assumptions and listen to people's stories.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Obviously, there is a huge variety of research projects and types of research that can be done. Do you have a personal favorite to work on?
Of methodology or
Yeah.
Yeah, with brand strategy.
Yeah,
Like, what's your favorite?
absolutely. I tend to lean more into the qualitative side. I'm part of an association, which is a long name, but Qualitative Research Consultants Association. And it's a group of people passionate about qualitative, which really means talking to people on one or in small group settings, whether it's in person or online or in small communities. But I really love hearing people's stories and them talking about whatever it is that interests them or what's relevant to the way that they're using the client's product or service. I feel like there's, Hemispheres is about left brain and right brain thinking, and a lot of the ways we make decisions are not rational. They're more emotional. They're based on different influences that we have. And so when you really get a chance to hear someone's story and kind of explore what's important to them, that's really when you get at some of those deeper emotions, which I think really influence how people make brand decisions. And then within that, my favorite methodology is to go into people's homes, because you learn so much about them and what they're, you see things in their home, you can ask questions
Yeah.
about, and it really is powerful. One quick example, we were doing a project for a food company, and they wanted to understand the big box shopping experience. And so we go shopping with someone. He comes back with this big box of some kind of frozen food, and he opens it up because it won't fit all in his freezer. He's got to put some in
Right.
his kitchen freezer, some in
I
his
feel that. Been there.
garage freezer. And he gets out a Sharpie and he starts writing down something on each of the packages. And I said, well, what are you doing? He's like, well, I have to write down how long I put it in the oven or microwave because there's no label on it. And so just someone wouldn't have told us that if we'd asked, what do you do when you take out your packaging? But because we observed it, he barely noticed he did it. It was a great insight that they needed to individually label every package.
Wow, that is cool. That is the fun stuff. Getting to see like the individual in their daily lives. And yeah, I heard about a friend, one of the research women that she came and spoke at MCI, but she talked about that with having to sit and watch a woman put on makeup. She worked for L'Oreal.
Yeah.
And she had to watch how she put on makeup and learn, it was just fascinating that's how we learn. Now, are there trends out there right now in research? Meaning, like, are you doing a lot of focus groups? Are you doing is there a lot of virtual interviews? Like, what is the primary way with brand strategy methodology that you're using, aside from just like overall qualitative preference?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're still we do a lot of online surveys, and that's not going away. People are taking a lot of those surveys, and we're doing a lot of analysis based on that. A lot of traditional kind of focus group and in-depth interview work has moved online. So we're doing a lot of those over platforms
that makes
like
sense.
this.
Yeah.
So, and it's actually really cool because a lot of people who wouldn't want to or were able to take the time to go to a research facility are participating. We did an interview on beer, and one of the customers of this brand, she did the interview from her truck. And it turns out that she has a baby that's just really attached to her. And so if she had done this from her house, the baby would have kind of gotten in the way. So her husband was with the baby in the house. She went into her truck, and we did this whole interview, and it was fantastic. And we were really able to hear her story. So that's a trend. People are, using their phones to share video or images of their home, even while we're remote. So that's really cool. There's online communities where people all get into a certain research platform and share that. I think the latest thing really is AI. And so there's a lot of tools being developed to augment research with AI. And that's something that we're paying a lot of attention to and figuring out how we can use it or how we can help our clients use it.
Do you find that when you're doing virtual focus groups, because I've been in enough focus groups to know that you have a moderator, right? Which is probably you or whomever, and or Lynn, and you have to like control the narrative a little bit because there could be that one person that talks a lot and then everybody kind of goes in that direction. How do you mediate when you have that like lag time and there's just like a lack of spontaneity sometimes?
That is absolutely a challenge, more so online. When you're in a focus group room, you can kind of use body language and see everybody. It's a lot easier to get them connected. Because of that, we try to have smaller groups online, and really, and a lot of times we prefer one-on-one. But if we're doing a group setting online, we want a smaller number of folks, and we want to try to keep them engaged with some different exercises. Some of the research online research platforms have some tools, some things they can do. You could have them draw on a whiteboard. One of the things we did learn that was an advantage of online over in person was something as simple as the chat feature. So while you're having the conversation, people in the chat feature can, I agree with that, or I have another thought on that. Whereas in a focus
Right.
group room, they'd have to write their own notes. The moderator wouldn't see them. So there's some tools for online that make it more powerful. Then, of course, the clients can observe in a virtual back room and share notes, and they can be anywhere in the world, which is really powerful.
I like that. The more I think about it too, the better, because even one-on-one, if you're going to do a focus group, let's say you do a focus group of 20 over, still that one-on-one that's how that person is experiencing life anyway. So it's like better to not have all that influence. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then even seeing people's backgrounds, like I'm seeing your backgrounds, you're seeing my background, is a little clue into everybody's life. And so you can get that and get a snippet of their home life in the research.
Are there any advantages to larger groups, or is it just a time saver, basically?
Lisa, you're asking about for online?
Yeah.
The advantage is that you do have more people, you do have more perspective, and when it goes well, they're responding to each other and they're building on each other's ideas, and it's a little bit more of a brainstorming session. But that can be harder to do online. But there's techniques that we can use to try to get them to interact with each other and share their experiences.
Okay, so let's really quick talk about naming. And, obviously our audience is marketing directors and leaders. Everyone talks about going through a rebrand, and it's a really big deal if you're doing a name change. And it's like the biggest deal, right? So briefly, obviously this is so complex, but what are the steps that someone would have? What are the things that people have to think about that they're not thinking about that they need to consider when they're going through a name change?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this goes back to the idea of hemispheres and left brain and right brain thinking, rational, emotional. My personal view, and I'm sure other people share it as well, is that the best brand names have both an irrational and emotional component. They're not completely wacky. They have some connection to the category, but they're also evocative and creative and emotional. Otherwise, they become kind of forgettable or generic. And so to use some local examples, the name Starbucks, which on the forefront doesn't suggest coffee, it does. There's a connection to the book Moby Dick and traveling. And so this idea of coffee shipped around the world, and it has a little bit of mystery to it, which is where they pulled in the mermaid. And so there's some kind of interest to it that does tie you. Think about people on ships maybe drink a lot of coffee. And so there's this kind of mystique to it. Another brand, I've worked with them. I also worked with another brand that they eventually acquired, Seattle's Best Coffee.
Yes.
Which is a very straightforward name. It does have Seattle in it, which people associate with coffee, but it's somewhat generic. And it's probably not a surprise that Seattle's Best Coffee no longer exists and Starbucks does. But I think if you had asked people in the 70s, which of these is a better name for a coffee company, they go, obviously, Seattle's Best Coffee, right? Because
Right.
So really in naming
example.
research, or whether it's you're actually talking to your potential audiences or you're just a team thinking about what name do we want to rebrand our company or our product or our service, if you go too generic, it's really forgettable. So you want to really think about what are the brand attributes or product attributes you want this name to convey, and how well does that name hint at that? And so a research process that we and others follow is to really evaluate how well does the name suggest things that you want your brand to represent or stand for, and use that information to inform your decision rather than which one do you like the best.
Oh, I love that. I love the idea of that. Would seem like something you have, like your methodology and the way that you go about it and the way you think about it, which comes from years of experience. But then now you have AI that will also help you like go out there, and it just pulls from weird places that maybe, it would take forever to pull from, to give you some like feedback and ideas of like, I would just think that would be helpful. Like, oh, this is the Greek word for blah, blah. So that would be, I don't know.
That's absolutely right. When we're generating name ideas or brainstorming with clients to generate name ideas, we start with the themes. What are the themes or the brand attributes that we want our organization or our product to have? And now let's concentrate on those themes and not think about, would this be a good name? But let's just put that aside for now and just say, if we want to be healthy or educational or fun, what are all kinds of fun things? And let's get imagery and use that to inspire. And let's write down 60 words related to that attribute and then use
Cool.
that. And then we can kind of synthesize those and pull together names that are based in some brand truth, but are interesting and creative on their own.
It's funny you brought up the Seattle's Best Coffee example, because to me that sounds like an SEO nightmare, which is sort of similar. I ran into this recently. I was helping a friend try to look up a roofing company in their town, and it was their town's name, Best Roofing. And turns out that brings up like 10 different companies, and none of them were the one that had that name. So
that's a great point, Lisa, because in the early days of doing naming, we didn't have to worry about, is the website there or SEO, and now we do. There's actually a big debate about whether you need to own yourbrandname.com or if you can add modifiers to it. And some people say, well, do I need to be .com or can I be .something else? And I think where I'm hearing more often from people is that having the .com still is the best. It shows that you're a legitimate company, or .org if you're in that situation.
Yep.
But that you don't need to worry too much about it, because you can really just pull in some aspect of your name. And once people start going to your site, they're not going to care whether it's exactly that name or not. So for example, Hemispheres wasn't available when we started 20 years ago, but Hemispheres Insights was. So we're hemispheresinsights.com. It could lead to a little bit of confusion maybe, but it still has the essence of our name. And once people bookmark you, or they just are going to click on a link anyway, it's less important.
That
That's true.
expands too to social media platforms, if that's part of a marketing strategy. I feel like if you find a name where it's free everywhere, you kind of have to. The stars have aligned for you.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, definitely for me, for Double Z Media. It fell into, because, not everybody has two Z's in their last name. Genius, right?
Do you have any suggestions or recommendations for a company to keep in mind before they begin working with a research company that'll sort of help them get the most out of the experience?
Yeah, thank you so much. We spend a lot of time with our clients or prospective clients asking questions from the very beginning to make sure. Some people are really clear. They know exactly what they want to do and what they want to solve for, and some people don't. But really, it goes down to, what is the problem that you're trying to solve for? What is your marketing challenge? What's your business challenge? What's your organizational challenge? And what are all the questions that you have? And then if you had the answers to those questions, what would you do with that? And so we really work back from, what is the reason they need some more information or insights, and what are they trying to solve for? Are they developing a new name? Are they evolving their brand? Are they changing their pricing strategy? Do they want to figure out if they want to go into new channels to offer their products? Do they want to change their marketing messaging? And so we really want to understand that. And then based on that and other things like their time and their budget, we work on a plan that will work to provide the information and insights they need within their parameters for their business challenge or organizational challenge.
Okay, I have a question. So we oftentimes, as media buyers, have kind of go with audience personas, okay, that are given to us sometimes from the client or the creative firm, or sometimes we find them. I guess what I'm saying is, sometimes clients will be like, we want you to tell us who our customer is. We want you to tell us, all these things that we're like, well, okay, we're going to have to do some research and figure out who your customer is. You could tell us, but no, just so, and potential, but really it's a customer, like, right? How could you help somebody who was wondering, like, who are our customers? Or someone like me who is like, this is a brand new, call, and I'm not sure who your customer is.
Sometimes I'll start with just getting them, if they're not sure, getting them to just brainstorm and start to talk about some of the audience elements or some of the segments that they think that they might have. We're not saying this is it for sure, but let's just start to talk about it. And that really helps us to think about how do they think about their customers. Just
Right.
letting them kind of talk through it. Are they thinking about them from demographics? Are they thinking about them from how often they purchase certain products? In the case of the roofing client, maybe it's about, do they own their house or not? They probably do. And what kind of house is it? So just hearing the parameters helps. And then once we kind of get those parameters out there, I ask them questions about, well, how much information do they have about this? And are there sources of that information? Often, if they have current customer data, that's a great place you can
Yeah.
tap into that. But if it's prospective target audiences, we really need to then potentially do some research. Another way to do it is to look at their competitors and go to the competitors' sites or see what the competitors are saying. And there might be some clues there in how the competitors are talking with their audiences to understand how they might be looking at some different customer profile types.
Oh, that's cool. It's the only way that we are able to do it really is to start testing messages on different audiences and seeing which resonates, which is, it's okay to get any kind of a real sample size, you got to spend some money. And so it's kind of a lot of testing. And so there's just different ways to go about it, but that sounds a lot more reasonable to find like audience personas, like to go and tell the client, yes, this is Mary. She's 52 and she likes wine and cats.
Yeah. I will say there are some brand new organizations out there that are working in AI to take data that already exists and create AI-based segments. And then you're able to ask the AI segments questions about anything. You could ask that potentially anything.
That's cool.
What is your house like? Do you have any pets? What do you do on the weekend? Now, the potential is huge. Where they're actually getting their data from is unknown in some cases. Now, if you're a huge organization that already has a ton of research and a ton of information on your clients or your customers, that may be effective and probably accurate information. If you're an independent that's pulling it from random places, that would be a question I'd really ask them is, where is that data coming from and can I trust it? But it's an exciting potential. And at this point, without knowing too much about it, I'd say that it could be an idea for a way to brainstorm some things, but I wouldn't necessarily want to base a big business decision on it yet.
On the AI?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've had to like ask 7 times, and where'd you get this from? Sources, and then like deeper and deeper and deeper. Can you get me more than 2 then? Can you get me,
Right.
It's really prompt until to get to brass tacks of like who is, it's just some other agency giving their opinion. No, I'm just curious,
Right.
finding industry standards and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway.
Have you ever experienced someone misinterpreting or misapplying research results?
Never happens.
Not your research results, of course, because you provide insights and reporting.
I mean, we all have our own biases, right? I was just working on a packaging redesign project where there's 3 different directions, and the client asked me which one I liked the most. And I said, I can't help but have ideas from all the work that I've done, but I really hesitate to say it until we do the research because I don't know if I'm your target audience or not and what they're going to say. And so I really don't like to do that. But I think that often some people use research to just back up what they already believe. And so I just really encourage clients to kind of step back and check their current beliefs, which are still valid. They've been working in their careers for maybe many years, but to be open to what their customers are saying and be sure to listen to it with an open mind.
Oh, yes. I have sat in focus groups with clients and watched their faces like, oh, yikes, I didn't know. But I don't think there's a downside ever to focus groups because the worst case scenario, it backs up what you already know.
Yeah.
But at least you know. So
I did have a situation once, and this does happen sometimes, that a stakeholder who's not involved in the research process is only there for the final presentation. And it doesn't happen often, but sometimes they say something like, oh, I knew all this already. Why do we do this project? You're not telling me anything new that I didn't know. And my response to that is, well, you've been working in this business for 40 years. The chance that a general consumer is going to tell you something that you didn't know is probably pretty slim. They're not experts. You're an expert. All you do is think about this, and your family's well-being is probably based on you doing well and making money. But I said, what this has done has told you the top 3 things that are important to these consumers, and these are the 3 things you're supposed to be focusing on. So you might have had 100 ideas in your brain, and of course, 3 of those were already in your brain. But now you know the top 3 priorities to go after. That's a new learning, and that actually has changed. They're okay. Now I understand, right? I was thinking about all this stuff, but they helped me understand what are the 3 priorities that we should be focused on for this initiative.
Very nice. If there's anything else actually that you want to cover, David, I think we've covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. You have such good questions. You guys are 2 researchers as well, too, it seems like.
Well, yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I wanted to, same as you as far as copywriting. That's what I got my degree in, is advertising with a copywriting, concept advertising. And, I got in a media vine, but another research firm a long time ago was like, would you moderate focus groups? You'd be really good. And I was like, that would be so cool. Research, because it's so fun. Yes, you can argue with it if it is, left brain, right brain in some cases, but there is so much, it's just so much like what we do, where I go into a client and say, you can't argue with the metrics. You can't argue with this. This is not me speaking here. This is the metric. How many people came to your website? How many people watched? How many people converted? And so it is the same, very similar in that way. There's not subjective, like creative coming in, going, 3 different ideas and everybody has a different opinion.
Absolutely. Yes.
So very cool.
Well, David, thank you so much for joining us today. We do have one final question for you. If you could go back in time to yourself at the beginning of your career, what is one piece of advice you would give?
Excellent. Before I answer it, Lisa, you asked that so perfectly. Earlier in my career, we used to say something like, what is the best or the most? And we've learned since that if you just say, what is one thing, they're probably going to say the thing that's most important. And it's a lot easier to answer a question like that than when you ask the most. So that's perfect. That's a great tip for your kids too, if you have them. If you're driving home from school, you say, what's the best thing that happened at school today? They'll be like, oh, nothing. But if you just say, well, what's one cool thing that happened at school today? Everyone can come up with that, and it probably was the best thing. Okay, so now I have to think about your question.
I thought that was the piece of advice you were going to give yourself.
Communications expert here.
Yeah.
I know, from the creative writing to analytics position pipeline.
That's true.
I don't know what it is about that.
We're all left brain, right brain people, which I think is really
Right.
cool. One thing. I think that when I first started, it was intimidating working, hearing about all these big companies and these big decisions that they needed to make, and to make a contribution. When I was just starting out in these debriefs and ideation sessions with these top level folks, and I was 24, I challenged myself that in every meeting I was going to say 3 things. Might not be super smart. I might just be saying, well, what she said was really good because blah, 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 and building on someone else's idea. And the thing I learned from that is that, everybody has something to contribute, and everybody has a different perspective, and people want to hear your perspective, and I also want to hear other people's perspectives. And so that you don't need to be intimidated or concerned to contribute. We're all groups of people trying to solve challenging problems. And if you're a kind of a good participant in that process and open-minded and eager to listen to other folks, together we can solve those problems.
David, thank you so much for joining us today. And you can find David at hemispheresinsights.com. That's Hemispheres with an S, insights.com. That link will also be in the description.
Thanks for listening to the Paid Media Playbook. Want more content like this? Follow our agency, Double Z Media, on LinkedIn. You can find the link in the episode description.